The chamber quivered with an unexpected sound, Clarence Thomas's low, dismissive laugh cutting through the air like a blade. Heads turned sharply, eyes narrowing with disbelief as the echo lingered longer than it should have. Whispers darted from row to row, a current of unease sparking in every corner. Some smirked, others froze, but one figure remained unshaken. Jasmine Crockett's gaze lifted, steady and piercing, her silence heavier than the laughter itself. The room seemed to contract around her composure, every second daring her to respond. And in that moment, no one expected what would come next. This was not just a laugh. It was the sound of power mocking persistence, of authority brushing off the very voices it was meant to respect. In that chamber, the divide of America was laid bare, the insulated comfort of privilege on one side, and on the other, the rising determination of those who refused to be silenced. Thomas's laughter wasn't simply at Crockett, it was at what she represented, young, unapologetic, unbowed in the face of traditions designed to shrink her presence. For millions beyond those walls, that single moment carried a weight larger than the room itself. It was every immigrant told their accent made them less American, every woman told her sharpness was unbecoming, every young leader told to wait her turn. But Crockett's stillness in the face of ridicule was not weakness, it was resilience sharpening itself into a weapon. This wasn't theater, though it felt cinematic. It was a test of whether dignity could stand taller than derision, whether substance could silence arrogance. The chamber held its breath, unaware that Crockett's response would not only confront one man's laugh but ripple across a fractured nation. What happened next would ignite headlines, hashtags, and a movement. Clarence Thomas did not arrive in that chamber as a blank slate. For decades, his shadow has loomed over the highest court in the land, his name tied not to inspiration but to endless controversy. He rose from humble beginnings, a man who once claimed to understand the weight of poverty and the sting of exclusion, yet somewhere along the climb, the bridge back to those struggles was burned. His judgments, often cloaked in the language of constitutional purity, have instead been wielded as tools that narrow rights rather than expand them, tightening the walls around voices he once might have stood beside. Behind the marble walls of the Supreme Court, whispers of ethics scandals and questionable alliances have trailed him. Lavish gifts, cozy ties with political benefactors, rulings that align neatly with the interests of the powerful, each detail sketching a picture of a man more tethered to privilege than principle. To his admirers, he is steadfast, to his critics, he is detached, armored in robes that shield him from accountability. And yet, for all his composure, the laugh revealed something raw, not confidence, but insecurity. A man of immense power still felt compelled to belittle. His laughter, in that instant, betrayed the truth: authority may silence with rulings, but arrogance can still crumble under the weight of dignity. The stage was set for that arrogance to be tested. Jasmine Crockett's story did not begin in marble halls but in the quiet persistence of family and community. Raised with the values of hard work and sacrifice, she learned early that nothing is given, everything must be fought for. Education became her weapon, law her shield, and activism her compass. Before stepping into the glare of national politics, she stood in courtrooms defending those without a voice, refusing to back down when justice bent under the weight of money or influence. Her path was never smooth. She faced the sneers of those who doubted her, the dismissals aimed at her youth, her gender, her unrelenting sharpness. Each challenge only forged her resolve tighter. When doors closed, she pushed them open. When voices tried to drown her out, she learned to speak louder, clearer, with truth that cut through the noise. Crockett did not rise on privilege or inherited power, she rose on grit, sacrifice, and the faith of those who saw her as their fighter. She carries the lived experiences of struggle like armor, her victories etched with the scars of battle survived. And in that chamber, facing laughter meant to diminish her, she was uniquely prepared for this exact moment. The air grew heavier as the exchange unfolded, every sentence layered with tension. Thomas leaned back in his chair, his posture signaling dismissal, the faintest smirk curling as though the debate itself was beneath him. His words dripped with condescension, punctuated by that mocking laugh, as if to remind the room who had long held the upper hand. Each interruption he threw at Crockett was meant to rattle, to reduce her to hesitation, but Crockett did not flinch. Her body remained still, shoulders squared, her eyes locked onto him with an intensity that refused to waver. When he cut across her sentences, she paused, not defeated, but sharpening her next line with precision. Her voice, when it returned, carried no tremor. It was calm, deliberate, the kind of measured tone that unnerves an opponent more than any shout could. The chamber could feel the shift, arrogance clashing with resolve, entitlement colliding with unshakable composure. Whispers rippled again, not of disbelief this time, but of anticipation. With every second, Thomas seemed more restless, his confidence thinning under the weight of her unbroken stillness. And then she drew a breath, a quiet signal that her counterattack was ready to land. The silence was thick enough to feel, for a moment, the chamber seemed suspended in time, all eyes locked on Crockett as she leaned forward, steady and unhurried. The laughter that had rolled so casually from Clarence Thomas moments earlier still lingered in the air, but now it clashed against a silence that demanded reverence. Crockett let it breathe, let it burn into memory, before parting it with her voice measured, precise, and unshakably clear. "Justice is not a punchline," she began, her words deliberate, each one a scalpel cutting through the noise. "And if defending the people who sent me here makes you laugh, then perhaps the problem is not with my skills, but with what you've chosen to ignore." She paused, letting the weight of her opening strike land. Gasps scattered through the room, the kind that come when truth slips past pretense. She pressed forward, her tone unwavering. Point by point, she dismantled the facade, citing the rulings that eroded rights, calling out the ethical shadows cast by gifts and favors, and reminding the chamber of the voices who had no luxury of power, no shield of privilege, yet bore the consequences of decisions made in detachment. Each fact was delivered with precision, each line sharpened with wit that struck deeper because it carried no malice, only conviction. Thomas's smirk faltered, his eyes narrowing as the chamber shifted away from his control. Where once his laugh had echoed, now whispers of awe began to fill the gaps. Crockett's gaze never broke, her voice building, not louder, but firmer, drawing the room toward her gravity. She let silence fall at key moments, allowing her words to hang like a challenge in the air before striking again, and then came the close, her voice cutting through with finality. "You can dismiss me with laughter if you choose. But remember, when history tells this story, it will not be your laugh they remember. It will be my words." The chamber erupted, not with noise alone, but with the undeniable sense that a tide had turned. Smirks dissolved, whispers swelled into murmurs of respect. And in that instant, the room belonged to her. The moment her words left her lips, the chamber's walls could no longer contain them. By nightfall, the clip was everywhere, looping endlessly across Twitter feeds, stitched into TikToks, dissected on YouTube channels with millions of subscribers. The laugh, the stare, the counterattack, it was replayed frame by frame, every pause and punchline magnified into legend. Hashtags trended within hours, hashtag Crockett clapback, hashtag dignity wins, hashtag laughing matters. Memes spread like wildfire, some mocking Thomas's faltering smirk, others celebrating Crockett's calm, razor-sharp composure. Commentators scrambled to weigh in. Progressive voices hailed it as a turning point, a blueprint for how dignity dismantles arrogance. Celebrities amplified the moment, praising her courage to stand unflinching in the face of power. Even late-night comedians found themselves less in the business of making jokes and more in the business of repeating her words verbatim. The resonance was that strong, and yet the shockwaves reached beyond admiration. Critics who had long dismissed her admitted, sometimes begrudgingly, that the performance was undeniable. "Whatever you think of her politics," one commentator conceded, "that was mastery in the arena. This wasn't just a clapback. It was a cultural moment. A reminder that in an era where voices are often drowned out by mockery, one moment of clarity, courage, and composure could shift the narrative and remind millions watching that laughter may echo, but truth reverberates longer." When the noise faded and the headline settled into history's scroll, what lingered was not the laugh, but the lesson. Jasmine Crockett had shown, in real time, that dignity cuts deeper than arrogance and that substance will always outlast mockery. Her composure under ridicule became more than a personal victory, it became a mirror for everyone who has ever been underestimated, overlooked, or silenced, for the immigrant told their story doesn't belong, for the young worker dismissed as inexperienced, for the woman whose strength is labeled as attitude. Crockett's stand carried their voices into the chamber. She reminded them that resilience is not about shouting louder, but about standing taller, even when the room conspires to make you small. The power of her response lay not only in dismantling arrogance, but in offering a universal truth: you don't need to match derision with derision. You need only meet it with the quiet certainty of your worth. Her triumph was not just her own, it belonged to everyone who has carried themselves with dignity when others tried to reduce them to laughter. In that truth lies the crescendo: resilience wins, no matter the odds, and no laugh can silence it. Clarence Thomas laughed. But Jasmine Crockett's answer will be remembered. Not because it was clever, but because it was courageous, because it reminded us that truth, spoken with conviction, can outshine the arrogance of power. In that chamber, she carried more than her own voice, she carried ours, proving that dignity is the sharpest weapon against dismissal. If you believe courage should be celebrated, if you believe voices like hers must never be silenced, then be part of this movement. Subscribe, share, and stand with us, because together, our words can echo louder than their laughter.